Greetings, everyone. It is just before midnight here, Saturday, October 26th. Michigan wins 24-17 over the rival Michigan State Spartans, moved to 5-3 on the season, and just needed to get themselves in the win column in the worst way. We'll talk about the game. Ryan Van Bergen here with myself, Anthony Broome of the Wolverine.com. Probably be here the next 30 to 40 minutes. Disclaimer right off the top. A little bit of ruckus going on around me tonight. Okay, I'll just say it because the guy ran away. A drunk Spartan fan just got thrown out of the bar where we do our post-game shows every week. Made a fool of himself, which is characteristic, perhaps a tribute to some of the things that happened at the end of this game. Again, nothing crazy like the last time these two teams played in Ann Arbor, but some tomfoolery afoot here in downtown Ann Arbor. I'll just start by saying this about the game. You never apologize for the win. You take the win. You needed this win. This is one of those rivalry games where all you got to do is win by 1 point. And you keep Paul Bunyan at home. You make sure that you stay on top of this rivalry because there is no season that can be salvaged. There is no season where you can find any silver lining where you don't win this game. We'll talk about some of the good things on both sides of the ball, some of the things we were concerned about, but I don't know that this is one you puff your chest out about. I don't know if this is one that you scream through the streets of Ann Arbor, yelling little brother and blah, 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 because I think both of these programs have a lot of questions, but they needed this one in the worst way. Paul Bunyan staying in Schembechler Hall with his little custom-made maze pants, and that's all you could ask for out of this game.
It's a win. It's a win that, honestly, I wasn't even expecting. I was optimistic. I was hopeful, but the way that we've performed so far to this point in the season, I thought it was a legitimate chance that Michigan State comes in here and can bully us, and I was kind of concerned about that. And first quarter didn't go our way, but after that, I feel like you saw this team show some fight and show some spunk, show some no quit. And that's something I've been worried about with the trajectory that this team has been on. Is it'd be easy to fold up shop. It's easy to get individual, especially in today's landscape with how college football is structured. And you saw the guys in the winged helmets playing their balls off to win a game. And to me, there's a ton of stuff that you'd like to see that we do better, clean up, and have, go differently. But at the end of the day, the win is the biggest thing. And I'm proud of these guys for going and getting that.
I think for me, you look at this go through the box score here. I don't think Michigan had a penalty tonight. Let me check on that. No penalties. It was a clean game in that regard. I think when you look at the things they did offensively, didn't turn over the football, which I think is by far the biggest key. I mean, we've seen how it's derailed this team at times this year. This finally feels like, I'm not going to sit here and say that they're winning out. I'm not going to sit here and say they're going, what are there, 4 games left, 3-1, 4-0. I'm not going to sit here and say anything like that. But for the first time this year, I come out of a game feeling like you have something truly that you can sit here and hang your hat on. Really, outside of the third and long stuff, which we'll talk about on the defensive side, I don't think we've been able to say that to this extent so far this season. So that first quarter was bad, about as bad as it can get. I mean, when you get outgained 135-1, I think it was, and only be down 1 score, that's kind of miraculous. And Michigan State has to wear some of that, for their inability to take advantage of that. But I thought that Michigan's counterpunch was there tonight. I thought in those gotta-have-it situations, for the most part, they stepped up. I mean, you don't want to see 2 3-and-outs in the second half, but even when it's time to put a game away, you get that turnover on downs late in the contest, put the ball in Alex Orji's hands, call the QB draw, pick up a couple first downs, make them call their timeouts, kneel this one out, and Paul stays home. I just thought it wasn't perfect, but in a lot of ways, this felt like their most complete game of the year.
To me, the biggest thing was that it was a game where we controlled what we can control in terms of mistakes. Like you said, I don't think we had a penalty. We didn't commit any turnovers. We won the turnover battle. We got one on our defense. And it's, to me, these are the type of things that even if you maybe don't have the same talent that we've talked about from the year previous, turnovers are something that you can limit regardless of talent. turnovers are something you can generate regardless of talent. Penalties, pre-snap penalties, and penalties in game are things that you can control regardless of talent. And so when you see those things coming up and being reasons as to why we're not winning some of these games earlier in the season, to have those things sorted out, ironed out, and play to the level that we played in those regards, to me, that's a sign of progress, growth, development, and showing that this team has more to do and more to try to accomplish this season. Even if maybe we didn't have it go the way we thought it was going to go early on, I feel like cleaning those things up finally, it feels like finally a step towards progression and not staying regressing.
That's the key to all of it. We'll talk about the offensive side of the ball. We'll talk about defense. We will hand out our game balls this week. Last couple of weeks, that segment kind of went off the rails before we even got to it. And as we do every week on this show, we will take your questions at the end. But before we do that, I want to talk about our friends and our presenting sponsor of our Saturday post-game show, Andy Luedecke, over at My Perfect Franchise. Are you ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream? Are you looking for a side hustle while working your current job? You're looking to diversify, build wealth, leave a legacy, all of those things Andy can help you out with. He's a franchise consultant as well as a franchise owner that helps people find businesses that fit their needs, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. Best of all, 100% free to you. All you have to do is set up a time with him. You can book time with him at his phone number, 404-973-9901. Email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Head on over to his website. I think you could book some time on his calendar as well. Get with him today. If you're looking to get in the franchise business, Andy can help. So thank you to our friends at My Perfect Franchise. I want to start on offense, Ryan. The story of this game, the QB carousel turns again for Michigan. Jack Tuttle out of this game. It seems like potentially injury related. Had heard that he wasn't really at or active in practice this week. Turns back to Davis Moore. And, you know, when the winds are blowing this week in that direction, and you go back and you look at some of the games he played, you look at some of the advanced numbers, and, and I'm not, I like to look at Pro Football Focus. It's not the gospel truth. Sometimes it's a bit of an ink blot test. The numbers can confirm what you think. They can sort of push back against what you think. Davis Warren graded out pretty well with their metrics early on in the year. Now, again, it's all relative. I think a lot of the heavy lifting was done by maybe that garbage time drive against Texas, but, a guy that, made the higher percentage of what they term the big time throws, least amount of turnover worthy plays, even though we had 6 interceptions. You got this, like when we dial it back to, a month and a half ago, when he comes out of that Arkansas State game, we're like, you know what? That was probably the best game he played to this point, except for the fact that he vomited up 3 interceptions. And at that point, you kind of had to make a change there. It turns back in his direction this week. And all you could really ask for him is to play a clean game, run the offense, make the throws within the confines of what they were calling. And he finishes the day 13 for 19, 123 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks. I think that's, other than maybe the USC game or maybe the Minnesota game too, but those are with Alex Orji, your quarterback, so you're completely risk averse. The cleanest game a Michigan quarterback has played this year. What did you make of what you saw from him? And I thought at the end of that first half, started to really get in a groove and find a rhythm, and he was kind of zipping them in there. I'm not going to sit here and say he's J.J. McCarthy reincarnated, but that was a good night for him.
I thought he played as well as we've had the quarterback position play, and I don't know that that's even arguable, that he executed and managed the team as they should and should be able to, and we thought would be able to. This team, honestly, I'm slightly disappointed that we didn't get our run game going a little bit better. I think it's a surprise to me and probably a lot of people that you can lose the rushing attack against Michigan State and win this game. I think it's something like 48 of the last 52 or 53 games. The leading rushing team wins a game, and that wasn't the case as far as I know for this game. And so for me, even preseason, you're thinking about how good this offensive line should be, how great our dynamic twosome of backs are. And all you got to be is A.J. McCarron handing off to 2 monster backs and, complete 15 passes, and you should be a good quarterback. That's what Davis Warren came out and did today. And he did maybe even a little more than that because our rushing game wasn't where I thought it would be and where I think we as a team probably thought the rushing attack would be. So good on him. Good for him. It's about damn time. I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, see, we knew we had something. No, to me, this is, for me personally, I don't want to be a pessimist, but this is too little, too late in terms of Kirk Campbell in the quarterback room. This performance to me doesn't merit, okay, you had the quarterbacks right. No, this should have been game one. We should have had this, and we should have been developing from here. So I'm excited for Davis Warren and what he was able to do. I'm glad that the Michigan offense has a heartbeat and a pulse again. But to me, it's still just barely good enough. And that's not a knock on Davis Warren. He did everything he could with what he was provided with. But it is a little concerning that I feel like we don't move the ball if we don't get gimmicky and do some cheeky things later in the game. It's surprising to me we couldn't just run our normal running attack and get consistent yardage.
Yeah, and I'll credit MSU's defense to a certain extent too. I mean, even last week, bottled up the run really well against Iowa, except for a 75-yard touchdown run late in that game, which is still an explosive that can't happen for anyone's defense. But you kind of got the sense they were going to throw the kitchen sink at Michigan, and I thought they'd be able to run it better. I mean, Kalel Mullings, 13 carries, 18 yards. Donovan Edwards, 9 carries, 24 yards. Maybe the most pleasant surprise is that despite everyone in the building knowing that when Alex Orji's in the game, Michigan's running the football, that worked for them tonight. They had an explosive run with him, the 29-yard run. You had those couple of those runs late. I thought they did a good job mixing him in. You kind of had to manufacture your 119 rushing yards, but good enough would be the best way to term it. I think that's really, I mean, we've just been waiting for a performance of what would happen if you just didn't turn over the football. And I mean, let's be honest, this was not Big Noon Saturday, number 3 against number 7. This was 2 4 and 3 teams playing a primetime game at Big Ten Network because none of the other networks wanted to pick this game up. So you add that to it. It's, it's a 1-score game. I think you kind of take it for what it is, but Michigan did enough. And they, I thought outside of a few drives, I mean, you don't ever want to see 3 and out to start the game. You don't ever want to see, 3 and outs in winning time. But again, I just come out of this feeling like even in the most pessimistic of ways to look at it, the arrow, you're at least treading water at quarterback, if not the arrow slightly pointing up. Again, you got Oregon coming in next week, number 1 team in the country. For this, for the second time this year, you're going to play what the polls thought was the best team in the country at some point. A lot of this has to get better, but I thought for the most part kept him pretty clean. I have to go back and look. No sacks tonight. So despite some of the struggles that Michigan's had in the trenches, those guys did a good job protecting. What did you see up front on the offensive line?
I thought we did a better job, and especially in pass protection, like you just said, that we had cleaner pockets, we had more time, less pressure, and I think that related and was directly related to the throws that we saw. I still am somewhat surprised that we weren't able to get the rushing attack going, even though Michigan State is stout against the run. And I don't want to give our offensive line too much credit because I do believe Michigan State's defensive line is one of the worst at getting QB pressures, QB sacks, that type of thing. So they performed well against a poor performing unit in that regard. That overall, I thought our offensive line was a little bit better just throughout the line. Miles Hinton being on the left tackle spot is absolutely necessary. I think that he is we go or we don't based on the fact if Miles Hinton is in there, because his backup, Percy, unfortunately just isn't there yet. That's just where we're at as a team. But I still am a little surprised that we're not getting more, like I said, more yardage, especially with Mullings. I thought this was going to be a good Mullings day. And the fact that we weren't able to get him going, I don't blame it on Mullings. I think that when we give him the ball, it's still very telegraphed, very obvious. There were some creativity and some spark to our offensive play calling today, and I will give credit where it's due, but it's long overdue to have that spark, and I still think we're missing so many opportunities to make the boxes easier to run into for Kalel Mullings, Donovan Edwards, and therefore making our passing game better. So I still feel like there's meat on the bone, to use one of your favorite phrases, in terms of how we're play calling and what we're doing even pre-snap to set us up for success.
Absolutely. Let's just get out the offensive game ball now. Mine goes to Colston Loveland, 6 catches, 67 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also had the reception on the 2-point conversion. You have no success in the passing game without that guy. I don't know if that's going to be the unanimous pick this week, but guy continues to show up despite some volatility on the offensive line. Obviously, with what's going on at quarterback, just keeps putting good stuff on film and kind of gets the mic drop in the post-game press conference because he's not going to be here next year.
I'm going to give my game ball to Davis Warren just for the simple fact of you kept the offense on the field, you sustained drives, you took care of the football. It's a low benchmark to hit, but no one has hit it so far. So good job. Thank you for coming in and giving us a heartbeat.
All right, let's move to defense now. Like I said, that first quarter, about as bad a start to the game as you could possibly have. But overall, well, I'll start with this. Ryan, what is going on 3rd and long? I mean, it feels like that specific down in that specific situation, it feels like Michigan State hit on all those tonight. And it feels like most teams have hit on most of those all year long. So is that – I feel like we've had this conversation before, but is it schematic? Is it execution? Is it all of the above, which is on the OG himself, I would say? Like, what do you see when you just can't get off the field in those big moments? You almost wish you jumped off sides to shrink the field a little bit. Make it a 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6. I'm joking there, but good God, man.
Well, credit to Michigan State and to their back. I should remember his name, but I don't. But they had a lot of 3rd down run play calls on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 that caught us with either 4 or 5 rushing, everybody else dropping, getting depth, and we were just in a bad situation for run. And I don't know that I necessarily blame that on Wink Martindale. I think that's just a credit to what Michigan State had, where they thought they had an advantage, and they ran. It takes kind of some balls to run on 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, and if you don't pick it up, but they did it. And when they didn't run, they had routes that, and this is something that's just consistent and maddening for myself and I'm sure everybody else, but the amount of times we're at 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, we're in a zone coverage, we have a cushion as a corner, cushion as a safety, route breaks at the 9 yards, at the sticks, and we're 3 yards, 4 yards off. And to me, that's just situational awareness. And I feel like it's coaching, because if it's me and it's my defense, I'm guarding the sticks. And if you want to take your shot over the top and see if you can beat us and connect on that ball, go ahead. It's not a very high likelihood catch. But if they catch the ball at 8 yards on a 3rd and 8, they're going to move the sticks. And I feel like we consistently, mostly in zone, but man too, we're in zone a lot more than I'd like to be. But in zone, our cushion and our leverage just isn't correct in those situations and leads us into giving up pass plays on those 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9s.
So how does that get fixed? I mean, like, is that stubbornness? Is it, with the run plays, is it just a case of them getting got, so to speak? Like, when you go back to the chalkboard this week, or it's a whiteboard now, but what do those adjustments look like? Because Oregon is going to throw the ball all over the yard. They can run the football too. Everything now is what you do to prepare for next week's game. So what is the adjustment to make?
I think the adjustment to make defensively on the run game, especially 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 9s, when they hit you with 2 or 3 of them, you've got to stop calling nickel and dime defenses that represent a pass first defense. Play something that's neutral. Play more of your first down stuff. That's, to me, it's just a different call goes in on 3rd down when you're seeing more of that. And then it's technique. Whoever's coaching at DB and safety, when you're in zone and you're playing the sticks, we need to have tighter coverage. We need to be in phase when there's a break on a route. If you are behind when the receiver makes a break, you're going to lose the rep. And unfortunately, that risks exposure for getting beat behind you, but teams aren't throwing behind you because they know you give it up. So to me, you have to almost abandon your pride or ego and be too scared to get burnt deep to not give up these first downs. And it's not always going to be the case, but we are on way too far skewed in the percentages of allowing conversions on these things. You can't take it away every time, but we can definitely take it away more than we are now.
All right, well, let's talk some positives on defense because I thought it was a positive night. I thought there was a chance that, when you looked at, I said it last week. I said it when I made the game pick this week, and hand up, I'm accountable for these things. I picked Michigan State to win. I thought that they had, they came to this game with a team that was better coached at the time. I thought they still leave this game with the better quarterback. Thought there was a chance for them to kind of throw the ball around the yard with Will Johnson out, even with, with some of the things we just talked about with Will Johnson in the lineup. Those explosives have still been there. But 17 for 23, 189 yards for Aiden Childs. Certainly disappointing with the way that Michigan State was able to run the ball. That was frustrating. That made this game closer than it needed to be and contributed to some of those third downs. But overall, the defensive performance, I'm really interested in seeing what the pressure numbers look like when these analytics are out tomorrow. But 3 sacks on the night. Josiah Stewart had 1. Derek Moore had 1. Said that they were going to start coming in bunches for Derek Moore. Cam Brandt had a nice night. I thought that both Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant had great days at the office, and that's your old position group. So let's love on those guys for a bit.
I think without them, we end up losing this game. And if we don't get that strip sack before the end of the half, I think this game's complexion changes pretty drastically and dramatically. I feel like Josiah Stewart, Derek Moore, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, all those guys had an impression on today's game that without that presence, this game doesn't go in our favor. And luckily we have those guys, because I think that if they weren't there, the offense would be continuing down the field because they were establishing drives early and often. And the only reason those drives got ended was, in my opinion, due to pressure primarily. I thought the linebackers played pretty well too and had their hand in a lot of the plays. But overall, I mean, Josiah Stewart is just big time. He always shows up on a big play when you need him, and he's reliable in that fact. Derek Moore has had, like you said, a lot of consistently good pass rushes that relate and maybe pressure, but not the sacks. And today he finally got one. But overall, I feel like the defensive line, we've known that it's our strength, and it's definitely picking up for the fact that we have, no Will Johnson. And to be honest, I feel like if you have to pick on a group that's not performing well consistently, it's the secondary. So you can cover up your secondary when you have a good defensive line. With that being said, if the first read is available on a pass play on these 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 9s, your defensive line can't do anything about it besides maybe knock the ball down. If your first read's going to be available, your defensive line is going to have a very long day. And that's one of the things that I feel like we've talked about repeatedly in these post-game podcasts is we consistently see the first read for other teams' offenses being open, and we don't understand why. I still saw a lot of that tonight, and big concern, and hasn't gone anywhere. That red flag still exists.
This kind of goes hand in hand with the third downs again. Not to go back on the roller coaster of the ups and downs, but is Mason Graham playing edge a good look? I'll just leave it at that. Is that a good look?
No. We should not have Mason Graham on the edge. And I would just say that even if he was on the edge, if he's going to stunt down to the middle, I'm better with that. But to keep him on the edge would be a mistake. That's not where he's going to be at his strongest. And to be honest, I think one of the reasons we're successful is because of the dynamic and the complementary football that we play. Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham being in the middle and moving the pocket back makes the quarterback more accessible to the edge guys. If there is no pocket push, the edge guys aren't going to be as successful. And so to me, this isn't something that you mix up to see if you can get better results. This is something that's functioning well. Maybe you can have a couple other stunts and something creative that you do with these guys, but we are getting pressure with these guys. The back end needs to clean up so that we don't need to dedicate more in pressures. That's one thing that I feel like we went away from a little bit, which I think helped us today, but I have not enjoyed some of the choices of when to apply pressure, when to bring extra guys. And if you have a D line that's playing at the level that our guys are, you don't have to go into that bag because they're getting the pressure all on their own.
Want to give some props to, you mentioned it briefly, the linebacker play, I think has been one of the things. I think back to that Texas game, and it was about as bad as you can play, and I think the grades bared that out too. Specifically the last 2 weeks, I want to shout out Jayshawn Barham. It seems like he's playing a little more contained, a little more within himself. Super prone to over pursuit early on this year. It seems like coming out of the bye, we've seen him play his 2 best games of the year to this point. Would also maybe love to see him get a few more looks here and there on the edge. I think that's a skill set. Michigan hasn't really tapped into a ton with him this year, but I think he's playing pretty good ball right now. Arrow's pointing up for those guys. Arrow pointing up for Jair Hill, who I thought had a few nice tackles in this game and performed fairly well. Any other defensive takeaways from tonight?
I thought Ernest Hausman had another good game. Another guy that I feel like has been pretty consistent, but we've been looking for him to have, I think, more of an impact. And I think he was a good complement to Barnum today. I also think that Jair Hill had a good game. Don't want to call out guys that didn't, but one guy that I feel like I just continually realize how much we miss is Mikey Sainristil, because Nate Berry in that position just does not have the same impact. And nothing against Berry. Mike Sainristil was a generational talent, and I feel like he's a guy that you don't just go out and replace a Mikey Sainristil. But there's times, especially in this game, where he came off the nickel blitz or he was on coverage and he was someone that they're targeting. And so that was something that I noticed that repeatedly, if you're not going to win with that nickel blitz or he's not going to make the play, there's no reason to have him out there. And so that was one thing that stood out to me, was that a little bit of a struggle there at the nickel position.
Game balls here. I'm going to give mine this week to Kenneth Grant because he recovered a fumble and he just fell down. Didn't try to score a touchdown with it, which I think he said in the post-game press conference that he learned his lesson from last time. Who's your game ball on defense?
Game ball on defense goes to Josiah Stewart, because I think that one play of that strip sack, running them down from behind, giving us another possession, giving us the lead before half, I think that changed the whole landscape of the game. And that's personally, obviously I'm biased, but why I love the position, because how many other positions can you play where that one play changed the whole landscape of a game? And good for him. Josiah Stewart, you get a game ball.
All right, I think that's where we'll move into questions here. We have 4 of them currently in the chat. I'm just going to plow through those, maybe have room for a few more, but get those in, kind of your last call for that before we get out of here. A little bit tighter than usual this week, given it's after midnight if you're on the East Coast. We'll go to Kyle TT, who says, how do we grade Kurt Campbell's play calling? There's still some good stuff in there. I wonder how much of that has a Sherrone Moore influence to it. I don't think that he's straight up taking the play sheet and calling a halfback pass or calling a flea flicker or things like that. But one of the better nights of the year, but also just because, simply by virtue of the quarterback not turning over the ball. I don't know, just still think they kind of lose themselves a little too often. They'll run the ball right up the middle with Donovan Edwards. They'll run a pitch play to the outside with Kalel Mullings. It just doesn't seem like they always have their personnel completely kind of dialed in.
C+ is the grade that I would issue, just slightly above average. And I'm not someone that wants to start a campaign or anything like that, but my personal opinion is that there has been enough not produced by our offense, the where we stand nationally in terms of points per game, passing yards per game, yards per game, first downs. We're in the last of all those categories. He's also been in charge of the quarterback room. So to me, I've already moved on to this is a shoe that's falling. And there's not much that could happen that will change my perspective, and today's definitely not one of those games. I feel like it was just above average, could have been way better, could have been better schemed. It was just enough to get the job done.
Go to this one from Gary Green, who says, why don't we get Edwards involved in the passing game more? That's a great question. I feel like at times they try to get him involved and the quarterback doesn't see it. Other times, curious to be, I guess it kind of goes hand in hand with the play calling and not completely kind of emphasizing what I think your players do well. I think that's been one of the more disappointing things of the year to me in terms of just getting Donovan involved in the passing game as a check down, but defenses don't really respect it either.
I think we struggle to use the pass in even a short game capacity to the same level that I see average teams using it in terms of screens, not just to the back, but tight end screens. I mean, we saw that to death today from Michigan State. Tunnel screen, smoke screen, out to the receivers. I feel like we lack that part of our offense, and I don't know if that's a lack of ability to execute that type of play, or if there's another reason that it doesn't exist in our playbook. But that's just another knock to me on the Kirk Campbell play sheet, that those plays don't exist. I don't have a good reason why we don't have Edwards in on the passing game. We can't pass it to Edwards when we run him into an 8-man box between the tackles 2 times and it's 3rd and 9. Maybe that's the answer, but the reason is because we're not calling it.
Go to this one from Thomas Dew, who says simply, can they beat Oregon next Saturday afternoon? I'm not going to pick that. I don't know what the Vegas line looks like. Doesn't really matter. I don't see that going well, but is there a path to that? Maybe. My gut reaction is you got to be able to run the football. If Michigan doesn't run well, or doesn't kind of run the way they did in game, like the games against USC or Minnesota, they will not win that game, and they'll probably get run off the home field. That's where I'm at right now.
Very unlikely that we beat Oregon. There's a 1% chance, but to me, this team's not in a spot where they can focus on, can they beat Oregon? Can they execute on drive number 1 and play number 1 and see where you're at the end of the game? To me, my strategy wouldn't be, are we going to beat Oregon? Can we be there? Can we be in the game and in the fight in the second half, in the third quarter, in the fourth quarter? If we can keep it to a 1-score game in the fourth quarter, I like our chances. But if for whatever reason it goes a different way and we're down by 30 before the fourth quarter starts, that could happen too.
A lot of things in the range of outcomes for next week. Unfortunately, I don't think a win is one of them. But hey, college football has been weird this year, and teams jumping several time zones have had issues. So crazier things that happen, I guess. Paul Holbrook says, why is the team so poor at tackling this year and out of position so often?
The tackling, and I think those two kind of complement one another. The tackling and the out of position, to me, is a result of an increase in the number of times that we're pressuring, even run pressures and pass pressures, especially pass pressures when they're running the football. You're moving so fast that there's lots of times that you overrun a gap, or you are, overrunning a block, or you're running underneath a block that you should be challenging or forcing or caging. So I think it's a result of the different play calling. And to be honest, I still see a lot of what looks like indecisiveness pre-snap from the defense. There seems to be a lot of times where there's guys still checking and looking and signaling at the snap of the ball. And to me, that's a sign that there's a lack of understanding. Not everybody grasps what's going on. And I know Wink Martindale is this NFL guy, but I still maintain that I don't remember the Giants ever being a dominant defense. So I'm waiting to see more and improvement. I thought that would happen, because if you have a first-year guy, usually by game 6, game 7, all right, the wrinkles are ironed. To me, the iron must not be plugged in, because the wrinkles still exist.
I want to shout out real quick. My buddy, he's a Giants guy, Dan Schneier, who I talked to after Wink was hired, who basically told me exactly what this defense would be. They're going to bend. Sometimes they'll break. A lot of times it's going to come down to if an individual guy makes a play or not. And I feel like I've mostly seen that this year. So, Dan, you hit the nail on the head, buddy. 2 more here, and we'll get out of here. This one's from Your Average Fan. He says, a lot of recruits at the game. How does Michigan have that momentum off the field, but not a ton on the field? I'll take that one to start. I think the message to recruits, and you look at this week, 5-star offensive lineman commits to them. You've got a top 100 guy at cornerback in Shamari Earls that Michigan's trying to flip from Georgia. He was at the game tonight. I think one of the biggest things they have going in their favor is that look at what looks like a talent deficit right now. If you come here, you're going to play right away. And I think, to Michigan's credit, a lot of this momentum we've seen of late, and we'll see if any of it's legitimate with a guy like Bryce Underwood. I tend to still kind of say that's not going to happen. But the NIL has picked up, and they're kind of boats sailing in the same direction there. So I think that's the message. I think that, Michigan's able to sell early playing time for a lot of these guys. I think they're able to sell their recent success. I mean, lest we forget, there's a lot of talent left on this team, but there's a lot that did leave, and there's a lot that will leave after this year. I think those are probably data points that are in their favor right now. Do you have any thoughts on the state of all of that?
To me, I think if you're a good salesman, you can still very much sell the Michigan experience to an incoming recruit. Maybe even more so now, weirdly, than when we're 3-time back-to-back Big Ten champs and return all these starters. The platform that Michigan provides isn't going anywhere. You're still going to have the most exposure of any other college program that you would go to, any other top 10 program. You're going to get the same number of looks as if you were at Ohio State or Alabama or Georgia or LSU. You're going to get the same NFL potential out of this program. And if I'm a recruit, there's a part of me that thinks I may not have to compete as hard at Michigan to get my job as I may have to at some of these other schools. I don't know what the landscape is at these other schools, and it obviously is going to depend by position. But it's an interesting prospect because to me, back when I was playing, there was a rule that if you transfer, you sit out a year. There was no portal. There was a little bit more of a commitment when you went to a team. And now I feel like it's an opportunity for you to go in. And if they get new coaches, great. I get an opportunity to with the reset button being pressed, to wear the Jordan logo and be part of one of the biggest programs in all the country. So I don't think that the season and the success or lack of success in the season is that big a variable in whether or not we're going to attract recruits, as crazy as that may sound.
Yeah, Michigan, a program that has always kind of inherently recruited itself well. Both coaching staffs that you played under were able to do that. You guys had a lot of talent on those teams, so it's never really been an issue at Michigan. We'll see if they're able to keep this momentum going moving forward. We're going to take this one from Mr. Dave and get out of here. He says, will the QB carousel keep going? Is it open tryout still? I think for right now, Davis Warren's your starter. I think that you should continue to get those reps. I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't want to speculate. I tend to think we've probably seen the last of Jack Tuttle this year. I don't know. Need some more information on that. All I can say is the things I've said the last few shows. Seems like that injury isn't completely healed. Seems like an elbow injury. So I think this dynamic is what they're going to roll with. And I wrote about this earlier today. It's the best option. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a solution, but it is the best option right now. And it worked. It worked today. You kind of just grade it on a pass fail at this point. We know what the state of the room is. Davis Warren did enough to win the game. And in this game, in this rivalry, you had to get this one. Tip my cap to him. So I don't think there's an open tryout. I don't think Jaden Davis is playing this year. I don't think Alex Orji is going to be anything more than what we saw tonight. This is your offense for the month of November, and I think they need to stick with it and live with the results.
I think the carousel will only exist if the turnovers present themselves. I think that the situation of what we saw tonight is likely what we're going to go with as an identity through the rest of the season, of having Davis Warren be quarterback one and then having a orgy package that comes in from time to time, just to add a different dynamic and make the defense game plan for it. But I'm not sure, and I should know this, I apologize for not, what the redshirt rules are anymore, but it's my understanding that Jaden Davis could still have some playing time and not burn his redshirt. If that's the case, I would not be surprised, and I would be disappointed to not see him get some legitimate game time reps. Back when we had JJ coming up the ranks behind McNamara, JJ got reps with that were intentional. And at the time, I think everybody said, whoa, what are we doing? Cade McNamara has been consistent. He's been a great game manager. Remember all those things that we said about McNamara. And then what did we end up having in JJ was a stud. So I don't know what the rules are, but I do think I'm pretty confident that Jaden Davis could play some significant snaps and still maintain his red shirt. I would still like to see Jaden Davis take some snaps if that's the case, save the red shirt, do what you need to do. But operate just to the letter of the law. Get him as much significant time as you can here in the next few games to develop him and show us that you're looking towards the future.
So it is 4 games. So he could play these next 4 regular season games if they chose to get him ready, if they chose to have him up. At most, they have 5 games left because they're not making the playoff. Still kind of scraping for bowl eligibility here. You play Oregon next week. You go to Indiana. You play Northwestern at home, and we all know what's looming at the end of the year. It's if they get to bowl season, it's extra practices. If he was to play in the bowl game, it would not count against the redshirt rule at all. So, yeah, if they get him ready, that's great. You're kind of now in that zone where you can play him if you need to, or you can kind of get him ready to kind of preserve that, have your cake and eat it too. But I think Davis Warren's this team's starting quarterback. I think he'll be the guy when they play Oregon next week. The task does not get any easier. You're going to play 3 of the top, I think, when the polls are out on Monday or tomorrow. You're going to be playing 3 of the top, I think, 12 teams in the country the rest of the way, and then Northwestern. You got to get to 1 to get to bowl eligibility. It would be great to get to 2 more. Would be awesome. They could find a way to get to 3. I think 1 or 2 is probably the most likely outcome. So Oregon next week in Ann Arbor, the number 1 team in the country, 3:30 p.m. CBS. We will be here live from downtown Ann Arbor at Regents Field, probably about an hour or so after that game goes final, as we have been every single week. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. A lot of great stuff. We're getting kind of close to the zone where we're double dipping here into basketball season. A lot of excitement there. So you get all of that great stuff here on the Wolverine. Use that promo code UM1 to get 2 months of access to our website, all of our premium content for $1. It's what my co-host Clayton Safey calls the best deal in America. So take advantage of that today. For former Wolverine Ryan Van Bergen, my producer Megan behind the scenes. Michigan wins 24-17 over rival Michigan State. Paul Bunyan stays home. Anthony Broome here signing off. I'll talk to you again next time.